guys, my name is Elisa and I'm a meteorologist on staff at Discovery Place Science. Your beach season might be wrapping up, but we are headed towards the height of hurricane season. So today we're going to talk about something called storm surge. You might have heard about it when you see one of our forecasts for a tropical storm or a hurricane. It's actually the most destructive part of the hurricane, and it has everything to do with the oceans. So we have our normal sea level, right, where the ocean usually sits, but these hurricanes and tropical storms come with very intense winds and they're turning into the coastline. So as that happens, it literally picks up a bubble of the ocean and tosses it inland. And you can see there kind of that bubble, the way it goes to shore, that's the ocean storm surge. And it could get as high as 3 feet, 6 feet. In the most catastrophic cases, it could even get above 12 feet in the most intense storms. And again, it's driven by the wind, it's driven by the location and the pivot and turn of the hurricane. So the storm surge might not be as destructive in a weaker storm, but especially as you get a category 3 or category 4 or 5 hurricane, this storm surge is definitely the most catastrophic, the most deadly part of a hurricane. So it's definitely important that we know what it is and how to stay safe in evacuating from it. Now, when it comes to climate change, we know that our hurricanes are becoming stronger because there's more fuel. Temperatures are warmer in the air, warmer in the ocean. That juices up our hurricanes, also gives us heavier rain. But it also gives us higher storm surge because as the oceans warm, that water is expanding. The oceans absorb 90% of the excess heat that is trapped by our greenhouse gas emissions, right? So the oceans are trying to make up for all the extra heat in the atmosphere, so they're taking it in to try to create balance, and they're warming up. And they're warming up so much that the ocean is growing taller. And it's not just the storm surges that are getting taller. We even have regular high tides that are getting taller. Higher tides mean more flooding, right? In some communities, there's a thing called sunny day flooding, and that's when we see the water come in on a sunny day. Sometimes you don't even need a category 4 or 5 hurricane to create this flooding. And this is why, this important stat right here. Our oceans grew 6 to 8 inches taller since 1920 in the last 100 years. And the forecast in just the next 30, that's in my lifetime, that's in your lifetime, it's expected to grow up to a foot. So a foot more of the ocean in just 30 years. That is a lot. Again, that's why we're talking about storm surge. But it impacts us at home. Why is this important? Well, right here in North Carolina, just 2 feet of coastal flooding impacts 30,000 people, 20,000 homes, roads in the way, and hazardous sites, right? We don't want water getting into that. So it really impacts lives, it impacts businesses, and that's why we're talking about it. But there's good news. We can be resilient, we can build better, build smarter to protect our coast, and we're going to do a really fun activity to learn about how we can do that, how we can build resiliency. So let me get out of the studio, let's go to the lab.
Let's get started. Now that I have my really cool science lab coat and all my science materials, let's go through this really fun activity that you can do right at home, and it's going to teach us about storm surge and sea level rise. So these are some of the materials that I have. Sugar cubes, so old-fashioned sugar cubes, not the kind of loose sugar that you might be used to. Some rocks, maybe some shells, something beachy to make your coastline. We've got some blue food coloring. Make sure it's liquid. We're going to dye water. In the baking aisle, sometimes you find a lot of those gel food colorings. It's not going to work well for water. We need some water, a hair dryer, and a paint pan. I like using a paint pan or a paint tray for this because it is tilted, kind of like our beach, right? It has the area that's up a little bit more and then the deeper side, so we can kind of simulate a beach a little bit easier since the paint pan is kind of already structured that way for us. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our side of the paint tray that's kind of higher up to make our beach. So place your rocks and your shells, the things that you've got, the materials that you've got to make your really cool coastline. Maybe have it emulate your favorite beach that you visit in the Carolinas. There are a lot of really beautiful ones that I've visited, so we've got lots of awesome options here. Now we need to build our little neighborhood, right? All the homes that are right up on the coast. So that's what we're gonna use the sugar cubes for. So you can also be as creative as you want to with this, but I wanna make sure that you have some homes that are right up on the coast, some beachfront property, right there, right up along the ocean, because remember this side is gonna be our ocean, stack some of them tall. But I also want you to have some that are a little bit farther back. You know, make sure they're all at different distances from the ocean, different heights. You want your neighborhood to be full of variety so we can really see the difference of the ocean impacts depending on your proximity to the ocean. Be creative. This is your beach, your neighborhood. Now we need to make our ocean. Our ocean is a really nice bright blue, so that's where the food coloring comes in. So we will just add like a drop or two just to give the water some color. Stir it up. Wow, it's a really nice bright blue. So not only does this just make it look cooler because the ocean is blue, but this will help us see the impacts of storm surge and sea level rise so much easier. And I can't wait for you to see what I mean. So we're gonna pour the ocean into the deeper side of my paint pan here, the paint tray. Okay, now we've got our ocean in there. All happy with some fish. And now we're gonna create some waves. And then when you're making the waves, I want you to think of two different types of waves. Remember, the ocean moves every day because of the lunar cycle, right? They're called high tides and low tides. So some waves will just be there without a storm, right? But we know at sea level rise that even those high tides are getting higher because there's more ocean there. So think about that, and then think of when a storm comes by or a hurricane, and then those waves really get picked up, right? That's the storm surge. So try to maybe with your hairdryer make some smaller waves, that might be a high tide, and then probably try to make some bigger waves that might be storm surge from a category 3 or 4 or 5 hurricane, okay? And kind of try to tell and see what the difference might be and what homes might be able to make it through the storm, okay? So you're gonna take your hairdryer. Be careful with the hairdryer in the proximity to water. Have an adult help. And you're going to kind of make some waves with your oceans. You guys ready? We're gonna turn on the hairdryer. What happened to your neighborhood? Mine's totally destroyed right up along the coast. Some of my homes even disintegrated and got into the ocean. And you see what I mean about the color, how cool it looked with the blue? Your homes turn blue once they flood, and then once the flooding becomes too intense, the sugar cube kind of crumbles a little bit. But yeah, so my homes along the coast didn't really make it, but my homes that were back a little bit farther and taller seemed to be doing okay. A couple other times I tried this out, some of these homes weren't always okay. So see how many times you can build your beach, build your neighborhood, and see how you can make it more resilient. You know what resilient means? It means strong, right? How can we make it more resilient and strong and able to fight some of these changes that are happening in the ocean? So maybe if you wanted to, maybe use some Play-Doh and try to build a seawall and see, does that help? If there's a seawall or if there's some kind of structure in the ocean that maybe helps keep the waves back, will that help some of these homes along the coast survive? These are actual problems that actual engineers and ocean experts and architectural experts are trying to figure out as our climate continues to change, as our oceans warm, and as our oceans rise. So something really cool that you can do right at home.